This set of questions is a previous exam set of questions that came up on the 2019 paper. So the 5-marker was on status, which is quite a nice 5-marker. And as I've said to you a few times, you have 10 minutes to answer that question. We've already done that, so that doesn't matter. But we're going to focus our attention on this 15-marker, which is a trickier 15 to do. So I've already modelled one for you last week that was a bit more straightforward. This one is a harder task because it's a little bit trickier with the term roles. It will always say using material from the item, because you lose quite a significant amount of marks if you don't do that. And sociological knowledge, explain how roles are learned through the process of socialization. Because I find this question a bit trickier, what I seek to do is, before I go into my paragraphs, what I seek to do is to try and clarify where roles are learnt from. So for example, I start it with roles are learnt through the process of socialization. Roles, I don't think I've made it clear that I know what roles are. So roles or parts we play are learned through the process of socialization from the agents of socialization. Roles or the parts we play are learned through the process of socialization from the agents of socialization who will use social control. Roles or the parts we play are learned through the process of socialization from the agents of socialization who will use social control to ensure we learn them. Whenever I get a question in a 15 that freaks me out a little bit and I feel like it's tricky, I always try to kind of recenter and point out, well, actually, those roles will have been taught to us from those agents of socialization using processes of social control. In the item, I've already read it, but what I've picked out from it is that roles carry expectations of behaviour. So I've picked out from that item, for me, the thing that I think's hinting at it most is that roles carry expectations. So what I'm going to do here is note that in the item, we can see that roles carry expectations of behaviour. That's literally just lifted exactly what the item says. In the item, we can see that roles carry expectations of behaviour. If we do not follow these expected forms of behaviour, we are subject to social control to ensure we follow the norms and values of our roles. In the item, we can see that the roles carry expectations of behaviour. That's exactly the same as what was in the item, so I haven't used it. But I know that if we do not follow these expected forms of behaviour, we're subject to social control to ensure we follow the norms and values of each, actually, or of each of our roles. I've showed the examiner there that I know that the expected behaviours, if they're not followed, we're subject to sanctions or social control to ensure that we learn, oh, well, I must know then that each role has norms and values attached to it. So I've shown my additional understanding as I've explained it. But it's like a mini introduction here. I don't always do them in 15s, but I tend to, if I'm finding it really tricky to use the item, or I'm finding it's a harder 15 because roles is a trickier one to do, to be completely honest. I just do a little intro. After I've done my little intro there and I think, phew, yeah, got the item, that should give me a good 3-4 marks there. I'm then going to move into my paragraphs, and I always offer the examiner 3. So one agent of socialization that teaches, and I check the question, that teaches roles is education. Education uses both formal and informal processes of social control, like criticism, deliberate instruction, and exclusion. I always like using education where possible because I can use those more formal processes and demonstrate my knowledge that way. So they use processes like criticism, deliberate instruction, and exclusion to teach the role of being a student. Uses formal and informal processes of social control. I list 3 to teach the role of being a student. For example, the norm for the role of being a student is to attend all lessons, complete work set, and be respectful and polite to teachers. If a student is talking whilst the teacher is speaking, they would be criticised. Please don't talk whilst I'm talking. So if a student is talking whilst the teacher is speaking, they would be criticised. Please don't talk whilst I'm talking. If they are still not following this norm, they would be subject to a direct instruction. Do not talk. If the behaviour continues, they would be excluded by being asked to move or leave the lesson. This teaches them to follow the norm attached to their student role. The trick here is to keep coming back to role. I know a role has norms and values attached, which is what we're demonstrating, but this is why this is trickier, because you've got to mention, so the norm of not talking whilst I'm talking and using these processes, but link it back to that's because that's the role of being a student. So if a student is talking while the teacher is speaking, they would be criticised. Please don't talk whilst I'm talking. If they don't follow that norm, they would be subject to a direct instruction, do not talk. If the behaviour continues, they will be excluded by being asked to move seat or to leave the lesson. This teaches them to follow the norm attached to their student role. What we're doing is showing the examiner we can use those social processes and give you real life specific examples, which is what they want to see. Education the role there is student. For media, I'm going to do media as my second, and I'm going to do the role or part as gender. So a second agent of socialization that teaches, and I need to check the question, that teaches roles is family. Family uses informal processes to teach us our gender roles. They use processes like, no, I'm not. I'm going to change that. I apologize. The second agent of socialization that teaches roles, I'm going to do media for this one. Apologies. The second agent of socialization that teaches roles is media, and they use informal processes like repetition, criticism, and praise to teach our gender roles. I don't think I want to do gender twice, just to show the examiner range. So a second agent of socialization that teaches roles is media. They use informal processes like repetition, criticism, and praise to teach gender roles. For example, if a female celebrity is unmarried and without children in her late 30s, she is repeatedly reported upon. For example, you're running out of time. "39 and no children. Divorced and alone at 40. Using criticism like this and repetition teaches women that they must take the role of being wives and mothers in order to be successful in our culture. So use processes like repetition, criticism, and praise to teach our gender roles. For example, if a female celebrity is unmarried and without children in her late 30s, she is repeatedly reported on, for example, you're running out of time, 39 and no children, divorced and alone at 40. They use criticism like this, and repetition teaches women that they must take the role of being wives and mothers in order to be successful in our culture. So in this one, we're using media and we're focusing on gender as the role. And in order to be a successful woman within our culture, you must take up the role of being wives and mothers. Otherwise, you're subject to a whole host of repeated criticism. If you wanted to, you could talk about the norms and values of being female. So sat with your legs crossed, shaving your legs. But I thought the linking it into roles of why just gives it a bit more range as well. My last agent, a third agent of socialization that teaches roles like being a good, like being a sister, is family. Family will use processes like rewards, positive sanctions, and praise to teach us our roles of being siblings, with norms like you must babysit and help them with homework. For example, when older siblings babysit, they may be given praise. You're such a good big sister. They'd be given praise. You're such a good big sister. Oops, such a good big sister. Or given rewards when they help them. For example, extra pocket money. This encourages them. This encourages them to continue to perform these norms for their roles in future. Try and sort those spelling mistakes. When older siblings babysit, they may be given praise, such as "you're such a good sister," or given rewards when they help them. For example, extra pocket money. This encourages them to continue to perform these roles to perform these norms for their roles in future. So that's the 15. Use the item. 3 paragraphs. Let me just show you, see if I can bring up the mark scheme. That's the paper. So yeah, 22nd of May was this one. Let me go back. Our exam board is Educath, which is the Welsh board. And then on their website, they have all the previous exam questions. Oops, I'm here, but I'm not. Oh no, I'm still presenting my screen. Okay. All the previous exam questions on here. Past papers. That was 2019. So in 2019, let's find the mark scheme. That's the paper. Mark scheme. This is what the examiners use to have marked these students back in 2019. So you can see here they give bullet points to the examiners to what to award for status. But we're not interested in that for the moment. We're interested in the 15. The focus of this answer should be on how we learn norms through the process of socialization. We learn them, the how is that agents using processes. That's why it's so critical. So we always learn them via processes. And they've given the examiner these little bullet points. Answer should examine how more than one agent teaches social roles. So we haven't just given them more than one agent, we've given them 3. That bodes well for us. Terms such as sanctions, role models, imitation should be expected. Well, I gave them 3 processes per paragraph. So I've given them a range of process words. There should be specific concepts linked to agencies such as family, education, work, and media. So for example, I've used repetition for media and I've used exclusion for education. What they're saying there is it would be very unusual for them to see exclusion for family, because we would hope that exclusion is never a process used by family. There should be appropriate selection and use of concepts such as norms, values, and specific roles and expected behaviour. So I have used norms, values, roles in it, and I think I've shown what it means. So I've shown that roles is parts, norms, and values. There should be specific examples explicitly linked to how roles are learned. So that's why I've given an example at the end of each paragraph, well, in each paragraph, to show those real life processes. And I've used the item to illustrate some understanding. So they're given those bullet points. A really good one to note actually for these 15s is I've got it on the board in W23, but RISE, which stands for role models. I haven't used it in this example, but role models, imitation, sanctions, and exclusion. You should always try and use it, I'd say 3 processes per paragraph in a 15, because that's what it wants. No matter what the question is, it wants you to learn, it wants you to tell them how they've learned, and they will always have learned via those agents using processes. But this is the mark scheme. So 9 to 7 is answers demonstrate detailed knowledge and understanding. 5 to 6 is some knowledge and understanding, and 3 to 4 is basic. I'd argue if you give the examiner 3 paragraphs with 3 processes in each paragraph and an example in each, you will provide them with the detail that they need. So 3 paragraphs on 3 different agents and 3 processes should push you to top banding, provided obviously you have a really good understanding of what roles are. 5 to 6 would probably be 2 paragraphs or 3 that are very, very short. 3 to 4 is you're not entirely sure how you learn. You've not really kind of picked up on that agents using processes that's needed. 6 here is you have used detailed ability to use the item to demonstrate your understanding. For 4 to 5, there is some reference to the item, but maybe you haven't selected as many examples. And 2 to 3, there is no items. You know, when I said to you, it's critical, you'll lose or you'll gain 3 marks if you use the item well, or you'll lose 3 marks. You see on the mark scheme, the item is here in 4 to 5 and it's in 6, but it's not in 3. So if you haven't got the item at all, but you have used really good examples to illustrate, you can still only get 3 marks, which is why use of the item in the 15 is critical. It hurts you a mark in a 5 marker, so you'll be 1 mark off an A, but in a 15 marker, it loses you 3 marks. Well, now you're 4 marks off the next band, so now you're moving grades lower. So just be conscious of that. If you do have any questions at all, please let me know. But can you make sure that you've written that out, please, on paper? Because I will have your red books to mark your essays. But can you write that out on paper, please, for me to check for your next lesson? So this is due for your next lesson that I see you. Yeah, any issues, questions, let me know. Take care, folks. Bye-bye.